This week is an extension of describing the wide variety of research methods available to the field of negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building. We will focus on the specific methods of behavioral observation. According to Gillum, observation is the most direct way of obtaining data. It is not what people have written about a topic. It is not what they say they do. You are observing what people actually do. Research can also be challenging because some observers have different perceptions when they witness the same phenomenon. Accurate observation, recording, and analysis takes careful planning. Observations can be made sounder by having more than one person observe at the same time, using the same recording method or coding to test inter-rater reliability. One problem with observation is it is time-consuming. According to Gillum, observing people is much slower or time-consuming than asking them questions. Furthermore, it is difficult to record all the events that are going on, especially if there are many people doing different tasks. Organizing observational data is a challenge. The longer gap between the observation and the recording, the lower the accuracy. According to Gillum, observation is watching what people do, listening to what they say, and sometimes asking them clarifying questions. There are two main kinds of observation. Participant observation, which is also being involved. It is mainly descriptive and qualitative. There is also the detached structured, or watching from an outside in a carefully timed and specified way. Then the data is counted and classified. The two things that need to be organized in an observation are a clear specification is what to be observed and a clear procedure for recording your observations. Haynes and O'Brien's Principles and Practices of Behavioral Assessment is packed with information about observations. According to Haynes and O'Brien, quote, behavioral observation is a systematic recording of behavior by an external observer, unquote. The authors describe 5 reasons why observation yields valid and useful information. First is the link between the observed behavior and treatments or interventions are more easily made through observation. Second, observation readily permits the evaluation of behavioral sequences and interactions between other people, environmental events, and target behaviors. In other words, observation is an optimal way to record behavioral antecedents and consequences. Third, observation methods can be designed to be highly specific or general depending on the client's needs. Fourth, the quantitative data obtained can be more readily analyzed for the purposes of testing hypotheses about the functions of behavior. It can be expanded or collapsed depending on the scope of the analysis. Fifth, evaluation of public events makes it possible to evaluate the reliability and validity of the measures and coding system. And finally, the data is collected in the context of other behaviors and interactions. Haynes and O'Brien differentiate between the naturalistic and analog observations. Naturalistic being in the real setting where behaviors typically occur, whereas analog observation is in an experimental setting with controlled variables. The authors describe the three classes of instruments for observation, including written forms, audio-visual recordings, and computerized data entry instruments. I would like to mention these are being combined with tablet computers and new applications which have a hybrid of data entry forms, webcams, narration software, speech-to-text recording, and analysis of facial movements. These mobile devices have wireless connectivity to record behaviors to allow instant coding by remote observers. The two approaches they list are intuitive judgment and statistical testing. They also emphasize the use of inter-observer agreement to increase the reliability of collecting data from behavioral observations. Observations may be structured to account for response modes. This example uses cognitive/verbal and affective/physiological modes across 4 parameters. The parameters are frequency, intensity, duration, and latency The figure also segregates causal variables into the classes of social/interpersonal and non-social/environmental. This type of observation coding could gather complex data sets about behavioral interactions. The authors describe several different methods of sampling strategies, such as event sampling, which is sampling the occurrence of a target behavior during a specific interval of time. Duration sampling measures the amount of time that has elapsed between occurrences. Interval sampling divides an observation session into discrete intervals that can last from seconds to hours. Interval recording may be divided into partial interval recording, whole interval recording, or event within interval sampling. There are also real-time sampling methods, which involves the observer recording the clock time at the onset and offset of the target behavior, and momentary time sampling, in which the observation only occurs for a very brief interval. Haynes and O'Brien's difference from other authors by classifying observer types as non-participant versus participant observers, whereas some authors, like Gillum, contrast participant from detached observers. Detached and non-participant observers are similar concepts. I include Ruggs and Peter's chapter on observation because they give some additional examples of observation which are simpler than Haynes and O'Brien. In sum, Rugg and Petrie are covering the same concepts with a different process that may better fit the unit of analysis in your research question. Drury and Scott say the optimal method for understanding intergroup conflict is to join one group, thus taking a biased position. The researcher can take bias in the role as a participant observer without skewing the results of analysis and reporting. This article illustrates the challenges of observing intergroup conflict. The best data comes from gaining trust as becoming embedded with one of the groups, whereas the group affiliation itself may bias the analysis and research. Drury and Scott give details about the partiality of access, the partiality in observation, and the partiality in analysis. For the observation reading, I'm going to end with the future of observation, communications, body language, and facial expression. I included this article to illustrate the complexities there are with psychophysiology. According to Cohn, Ambador, and Ekman, quote, facial expression figures prominently in research on almost every aspect of emotion, unquote. Recent advancements in facial expression measurements are moving from the manual coding used in the facial action coding system described in the article to computer automated coding. Understanding facial expressions and learning how to become fluent in communications through facial expressions is becoming an increasingly important variable in conflict communications research, especially as we are moving from voice to video over the internet for online dispute resolution, and we are watching the other party's talking head. The point is, observation technology, whether it is analyzing facial actions, monitoring brainwaves, or looking at the movement of military hardware with satellite images, can all be used by NCRP practitioners. During this lecture, I covered the variety of research methods in the assigned readings and optional readings for week 6. I look forward to reviewing your observation guides.